We seem to be having just a little bit of technical difficulties. Anyway, so we already have a bottle in Link's house. Nothing else of huge note. I know we had a big 20 in Escape. The level 1 tree pool looks like it's not anything important. Oh, the worst item for Lumberjack to be, in my opinion, is a small key, and that is what it is. So we have no idea whether this is required. Fortunately, this is Keysanity, so... if you need to get to Lumberjack, you need that many more items to be able to even get there. Myriachan picking up a upgrade to her bombs so that she can hold more. That's going to be less and less useful as the seed goes on, but it is particularly useful right now because having the difference between 10 and 15 bombs total is a big difference. It is much harder to run out of bombs at 15. Both of our runners deciding to pick up that heart piece that is on the way as they're going down. Into Kakariko. Both following basically the same route, so no big surprises here.
I'm terribly sorry about those tech issues. I hope you're a little more able to hear me now.
I can hear you 100% now. I should turn you down, in fact.
Let me turn myself down a little bit. Sorry about that.
No. I turned you all the way up because I couldn't hear you. But now I can. Everything's fine.
All right, yeah, this is fine. This is totally fine. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, it's exciting to see the uncertainty there in Lumberjack Cave. Never know when you might see us dip in there, but we will be looking for those 2 castle tower keys before we can ever make that trek up to Aga 1.
Veno finds flippers and lantern in Thieves' Hut, and Miria finding the book. So we might have a very early check on pedestal.
And that's always a great way to either elevate or kill the hype, just a super early pedestals check.
Looks like Miria finally has enough money with that 300 that I completely missed where it was to buy her bombs. Veno going directly to the pedestal as we were hoping.
Yeah, it's kind of the dream to get to know this early what we're going to see on the pedestal and if we're going to get some excitement coming from it. But unfortunately, our dreams are too often crushed by an early book telling us that it's just a little bit of love or something.
Well, our dreams are crushed, but the runner's dreams are not.
But it looks like the runner's dreams that are crushed today.
Oh, so that tells us a few things. It tells us that Meyer is definitely not a pendant. Is either going to be a crystal or it's going to be a crystal of some kind. Because that is the only place that is guaranteed to require the flute to get there.
Absolutely. This will be. We've already got one guaranteed part of the puzzle for the perfect nightmare seed for our runners. We have a required pedestal, and then we have that question that'll still be lingering in their minds as to whether they'll be making that dip up Aga Tower. But they'll have a lot more places that they can look for those 2 castle tower keys now.
The big question is whether Ven is going to realize immediately that this is an all dungeon seed and completely ignore maps. And this is information that Ven has over Myriachan, and this is a big piece of information. We'll see how big of a deal it makes, but unless Myriachan goes to the pedestal nowish, this could make a difference.
Certainly, you could see Venoxis knowing this is an all dungeon seed. If Miria never makes that dip up to the pedestal, she could be, or Miria could be darting out of those pendant dungeons if there are some maps that let you know, and that would not pay off in this situation.
Yep. Anyway, these sprites are Vivi and Zelda. Zelda a little taller than Link. I tried bomb jumping with Zelda and failed several times. But Vivi is quite short. Short little guy.
Yeah, some sprites that I think require some practice from our runners, or at least runners that, if they're looking at bomb jumping, have probably learned some shadow or sword cues. Because I'm with you, it's nightmarish for me to try bomb jumping with a sprite that's a height different than Link.
The race game has Bombos, which is probably a big deal. We know this is a all dungeon seed, so Bombos is going to get us into Ice Palace. We could have a very early Ice Palace on this seed if we get the mitts very soon.
Certainly, we still don't really have the first piece of our Dark World access puzzle for our runners. We don't have our Moon Pearl or a lift upgrade or the hammer, so that's something that they'll definitely be looking for, especially with Venoxis's knowledge that this is an all dungeon seed. Looking at where he can complete and when.
Absolutely. I don't know what held. Oh, I know. Nope. I don't know what held Veno off a little bit longer than Myriachan because he looked. Oh no, I know exactly. He went to check pedestal. He's about the pedestal check behind Myriachan.
Right, yeah, and it'll be interesting to see from here if Myriachan's route is the same that Venoxis takes, or if we'll be seeing Venoxis go toward Uncle or toward Eastern, and maybe see a little route divergence that early on with that knowledge about the pedestal requirement.
Well, yeah. The big thing is if you knew something was a pedestal. I don't know about you, but I avoid pedestal dungeons like the plague unless I have to go in them. So knowing this is a all dungeon seed means that not only do you pedestal has the flute, which is required to get into mire. So mire cannot be a pendant, therefore mire must be required. So therefore pedestal still must be required. Uh,
We are seeing a bit of divergence here with Venoxis headed toward Sasrala and potentially Eastern. This is something that would weigh on my mind potentially in an all dungeon seed, as I'm even more loath to double dip dungeons. So dipping over here, if there's something required, this could definitely give Venoxis a leg up if there's some avoidance of this area and a double dip into Eastern on Myriachan's part.
well, the big thing that the big thing reason I would think to go this way is this very early lamp makes me think that the back of uh, Eastern Palace might be required.
And that's certainly true. It does open up a chest for us there, and then also gives us access whether or not we find, if we find, even without a key, through the front door to that dark sewers chest in Hyrule Castle.
Yep. We might see a back of escape check with no lift upgrade, which would be very interesting.
It's certainly true. It's not the route that most runners generally prefer, but those three chests, you'll take them how you can get them, especially when you know that you're probably going to be expected to go just about everywhere in the logic for this seed.
Yep. Villagen, the only thing we know about the crystal status of Meyer is that it is a crystal. That is all 3 medallions very, very early.
Yeah, that is some of the earliest access I can recall seeing to, or the earliest pendant access to our dungeons. But we don't know what anything is, but we know it doesn't really matter.
Only Venno has checked. We do not have the key for Hyrule Castle yet, but we also don't have a lift upgrade. So either one of those is going to be our back of escape check.
And there's a very early Swamp Palace key, so we're still a great number of components away from Dark World access, and certainly a great number from Swamp Palace. But we know we're going to be going there, and getting in that first door is now a possibility.
I think the big thing we're seeing here is just a lot of items that you really need to see but don't want to see early are coming up early. Uh, so like Swamp Palace Key, we've seen all 3 medallions, so no medallion checks are going to be required. Uh, we have the book, so we have Desert Palace access.
And there are Titansmiths. We don't know if Zora is going to con us today, but that Zora ledge is certainly paying off for Myriachan on this check, and we're getting Venoxis heading into that dark part of escape check with the early lamp.
Where did Myria get her first lift upgrade? Because I completely missed that.
Sadly, I missed it too, but hopefully somebody in chat saw that for us.
I assume some kind of this. It was on the swim, either in. Oh, it was in Moldorm Cave. Okay. So Venno will probably get it when he takes the South Hyrule check, like Miria has.
You would certainly expect that. And then this dark lamp-locked part of Eastern, not paying off so much, just $20. But what we could see is, depending upon Venoxis's route, we could see a little bit more cash and possibly actually get that Zora check if he lumps in the same sort of pathing that Myriachan has.
With only 5 bombs, I am not confident in my bomb throws in Moldorm Cave, but I will be. I think, you, like ideally you can do this in 3 bombs, but and so 5 bombs is very cutting it very close in this cave, with that being our only weapon.
We do have Cane of Burna, which I believe will hurt a mini Moldorm and most of a magic bar.
That's definitely helpful.
You still gotta, carefully conserve magic, carefully conserve bombs. Double bomb would certainly help, but Cane of Burna does stop a little bit of the trolling from the mini Moldorm in the middle. And it looks like with a lift upgrade and an early lamp, Myriachan might be headed up in the direction of taking the old man home.
Makes perfect sense. This opens up a save and quit option, which is very useful. We know that that flute that is the main reason to have that extra option is not going to be available anytime soon.
No, we're going to have a bit of waiting, but what we don't have to wait too long on is this Agina check, which, with the flute so hard to get, could have taken a while, but instead Venoxis will come over here and collect $20.
So Venoxis is taking a lot of gambles that I really appreciate, and none of them paying off, unfortunately.
Well, that would, be just like a Keysanity seed to let you know really early on that you're doing all dungeons, so you think I might as well go everywhere, and all those out of the way places just eating away at your time. But wow, there's the moon pearl on the desert ledge.
So we have uh, Dark World access between our two runners. It's just the runners need to go to the places the other runners have been.
Certainly, and we will at least, I guess, be able to check a couple of locations here for Venoxis before he dips over there. So we'll see what kind of excitement Myriachan has waiting when they eventually dip here into desert. But yeah, we're looking for those two glove upgrades for Venoxis before this Moon Pearl pays off too big. There's the very exciting compass to Thieves Town, but with a big key on the torch here inside of Desert Palace. We don't know where we're going yet, but we know we're definitely going to need that key regardless, given this is an all dungeon seed.
Absolutely. So I know that might seem like a bad thing, but what that means is that boots are going to be required. So boots are going to be relatively early in this seed. Well, maybe not relatively early, but they will be in this seed somewhere, and that's comfort if I'm a runner.
Certainly, they're knowing that you're doing all dungeons. The worst fate I could imagine would be that I was going to find my boots somewhere upstairs in Ganon's tower.
Yeah.
It could be that bomb consideration. It looks like we're going to see Venoxis dip in here beside Link's house, grab some extra bombs, a little more security, and clearing out these enemies that are ahead. While Myriachan dips in and will collect their Moon Pearl and delightful compass to Thieves Town.
Aghanim tree, sorry, lumberjack tree was a small key. So the question is, how long is it going to take Myriachan to actually go to the Dark World? Um, I would be dipping in there basically immediately after getting the access, personally.
I think given the seed hasn't given you has given you access so early, and you got the book super early, you got the Titan's mitts almost for free. It certainly is very reasonable to make that very early dip into the Dark World.
We know for a fact that every non castle tower dungeon is required, Carissa. If you're implying that Aghanim is a dungeon, I can understand that. However, that is what we mean when we say we are saying all dungeons in this context.
And we never know. While we may not have to complete Aga Tower, there's certainly the possibility in Keysanity that we have to make a dip in there and give a genuine effort to collect something that is required for our runners to progress.
I had a glitch on my screen and it looked like Myriachan failed to actually pick up the Moon Pearl, but that is not the case.
That would have been an unfortunate one, but no, Myriachan has the Moon Pearl, and we'll get to see after this save and quit if we're going to see some very early Dark World, early Dark World experiences. Since we're starting at Sanctuary, it seems likely that it'll be a trip into Kakariko Village and then into the Village of Outcasts and see what Overworld and possibly what those first few chests in Skull Woods or Thieves Town have.
So I know it's pretty common from the this warp into Dark World to go north into Skull Woods before going south. Is there one you prefer?
For me, it knowing that it's all dungeons, I would probably be taking this warp north to just sort of see how many trolley locations I can knock out. I'd want to check my bumper ledge as quickly as possible and know if that was going to be yet another thing that I had to worry about. But in the abstract, Mothula scares me, and the first four chests of Thieves Town basically being overworld don't scare me. But given the absence of the fire rod, I don't know. It's just kind of a coin toss.
We have our first Dark Palace small key. Uh, that is, if you're very used to the two dungeons that require a bunch of keys, that's Dark Palace and Turtle Rock, you can figure out whether or not you should dip in there based on the rule of three. 3 keys for Dark Palace and 3 keys for Turtle Rock will allow you to uh, see most of the dungeon, or clear it in Turtle Rock's case, um, without needing that fourth or fourth, fifth, and sixth key in the case of Dark Palace.
And when we see our runners today dip into Dark Palace, I think will be, exceptionally interesting, depending upon what it does turn out to be, because we know that we're going to, at some point, have to find a minimum of 4 keys, possibly the fifth and sixth, for Palace of Darkness, and it'll be interesting to see if there are any hints given to our runners about where they should be going based on the logic around those pod keys.
The big thing about pod keys is if you know hammer jump, you can skip 1 key, and if you have both arrows and hammer, you can skip the other.
And here's Venoxis collecting his Titan Smiths. So Dark World access has been established for both of our runners, and it looks like it's going to be a little bit before. Oh, taking a death there from Myriachan. But it looks like it's going to be a little bit before we see Uncle or the escape check with Venoxis heading into Sanctuary. And then I'll promptly eat my words, as I believe this is part of escape that we have Venoxis dipping into here.
Yep. Uh, I think of this part of escape differently as the front of the escape, personally. So these Gibdos do 2 hearts of damage with every touch. So it is very difficult to do what Myriachan is attempting to do right now.
And this is one of those opportunities where that early access to the Bombos medallion could pay dividends for Myria here. We could just clear this room out, but it's so unusual to have it so early. It's sometimes a little tough to remember.
The big thing that Myriachan needs is a sword. You cannot use medallions without your sword.
Oh my goodness, how have I forgotten that? And all of the excitement.
And we're not out of the woods yet, and there we are. Small key to Turtle Rock. Definitely worthwhile. This death is, of course, required to actually get out of there.
Certainly, as with these enemies outside on 2 hearts and green mail, you don't want to take an overworld death in the Dark World, and we're seeing different routing from Venoxis heading into the bombable hut here after finding some bombs in the treasure chest game and taking the Village of Outcasts route.
Either of these routes works. I sort of prefer the north route, considering the fact that they do not have a sword. So despite the fact that they have the big key to Thieves Town, they will not be able to finish it. They don't have a weapon that can hurt blind.
Oh, and the hook shot in the C-shaped house that provides a number of more exploration opportunities for Venoxis, who did not dip up to Death Mountain, but now will have full access to both light and dark world sides, with the exception of that Hera area. Myriachan right on his heels, grabbing their hook shot as well, and we'll see if that dip into Thieves Town pops up on Myria's side as well.
So I just said that the dip into Eastern Palace didn't pay off, and I forgot that that's where all of the medallions are. So Veno Myriachan has checked a few different places than Veno has, but Veno I think has a lot more peace of mind than Myria does at this point.
I think Veno probably does have a little more peace of mind, and I think has now had enough time to come to grips with the fact that this is an all dungeons or very nearly all dungeon seed. And thanks to that dip over into Sasrala's back closet, there's actually a weapon that can harm blind in our arsenal in the Cane of Berna. But an unfortunate death here in the front four chest areas for Venoxis.
I completely forgot about the Cane of Berna. That is, with full magic, one of my favorite ways to kill blind, simply because it's very, very easy.
And yeah, that may well have been an intentional death there from Venoxis, although perhaps not wanting to, knowing it's an all dungeon seed, perhaps not wanting to take that dip all the way back into Thieves Town without the small key and without the hammer, and unable to collect that item that could be just another piece of troll.
And with Titan's Mitts, you can do basically all of South Hyrule, just south of Village of Outcasts, short of the cave south of Grove. So this is going to be more items. It's less likely to, less kill potential, and more likely to uh, be able to do blind in one go when they go to blind.
Certainly, all good points. And with that, we see Venoxis start off on the world tour with the Frogsmith, as Myriachan takes a similar intentional death and heads on out of Thieves Town, which we now know is one of our crystals, along with a 5/6 crystal at Ice Palace.
Bombos Tablet probably should also count as South Hyrule, but it has the same issue as South of Grove Cave, that you need at least the mirror to get there, and that has the extra requirement of the book and at least Master Sword.
And for Venoxis, we're about to learn about Ice Palace and also Swamp Palace, which could explain something about that small key as one of our 5/6 crystals. We know we're going to be doing everything, but now we know what might have just a little ounce of extra value tacked onto it.
And with that, we do know that Mire is just a regular crystal.
Right.
Venno did check Green Pendant, but we had a glitch in our system right when he did that, and we do not know which one it is. That is Fire Rod and Cane of Samaria in Hype Cave. I would call that a sufficiently hype cave.
I think it is to it. I think it's lived up to its name adequately well today. The just on the basis of the fire rod alone, just giving us access to at least one more chest in the back of Skull Woods should Venoxis make that dip. We can't get back to Mothula without a sword, but we do have that access to that front chest through the little maze area.
Yep, the big thing we're missing is Hammer in order to get into Turtle Rock. Everything else we have. And keys, of course. You want some keys to do Turtle Rock.
Venoxis finishing up his world tour with the Smith here. Gonna pay $10 for some labor plus some travel fees, and that accounts for a discount. And we'll see if it is worth the visit today.
It was very much not. One of the 2 useless maps in the game. With the Ganon's Tower map there.
And unfortunately for our runners, we may be opening enough chests to find the other one as well. It looks like we'll see Venoxis heading back into the Dark World here, and maybe checking that that north of Village of Outcasts route that we've already seen from Myriachan, but with the possibility that we could see just that one extra chest.
What I expect from Myriachan here is to go to Dark World, grab the purple chest. Nope. Not doing that at all. I have no idea what they could be getting out of, oh, nope, they saved quit, never mind.
Yeah, I was. Although I don't know that have we seen Myria drop into the back of Escape yet? I don't know that we have. I think the immediate play was to head to the Village of Outcasts.
If I remembered what was in the back of Escape, it might help.
I believe there's a reason that you don't remember what's in the back of Escape. As we'll see if the new Hype Cave pays off as Myria dips into Paradox. Not so much of a payoff downstairs, but that does leave us with the majority of our chests in here.
Just have to clear this out, which is better said than done. Mirror giving us Tower of Hera access. So, not as good as... Not as good as Hype Cave, but still pretty good Paradox Cave there. Mirror's a very important item.
Mirror is certainly a very, very crucial item here. It also will allow Myriachan to do a little more efficient routing between light and dark world here, if so inclined, of the Death Mountain chest that we have available. With half magic up on the floating island.
I would say that is certainly worthwhile to go get, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. I think that your quality of life from those 15 to 20 seconds that you spend collecting it is certainly going to be worth the time that you'll spend.
What with both Cold Stare and Trinex being very magic heavy bosses.
And also the ability to spam your fire rod heading up the gauntlet, certainly something that makes that process a little less painful.
I think the only time I would even consider not taking half magic would be probably if it were on Lumberjack Ledge. Every other, even short detour is definitely worthwhile.
I've been trying to come up with another place that I could see it and not go for it, and I'm struggling. I don't know that I can come up with one. But certainly something that, whether they decide it's worth the time or not worth the time, our runners will be happy to know its whereabouts, just in case. As we see Myriachan heading into Super Bunny Cave and see if it continues the relative hype of finding a mirror on Death Mountain.
I think the big thing that half magic gives us here is the ability to safely. Oh, that's the bow. That is a another weapon, a weapon that we could actually use to finish escape reasonably.
Absolutely it gives us much easier access into escape, and that's just with as few locations as it's required in an all dungeon seed, which Myriachan still doesn't quite know. But knowing where that is, just it's a little bit of troll that you don't have to worry about today.
I think it would be even the half magic is even more worthwhile for Venno when he sees it, because of uh, him having only magic using items right this moment as weapons.
It certainly makes the prospect of having to go into your all dungeon seed with if you're looking at the possibility of staring down a boss fight with potentially no hammer even at this point, definitely a much more palatable proposition when you've got half magic and know that red cane, blue cane, whatever it is you need, fire rod, gonna go just a little bit longer.
Oh goodness, when did Miria get a sword? What am I doing? What did I miss? Apparently, Super Bunny Cave was a sword.
Apparently Super Bunny Cave has been the real hype cave this whole time. That was I think me peeking over at Venoxis, and I thought that I had seen a validation arrow, but it was much better than that. And it looks as though Myriachan is going to check the two locations we can see in Tower of Hera. We've got the basement and this middle chest here. But those 50 rupees will be all that we're able to collect, lacking both the small key for downstairs and the big key for upstairs. Also, Myriachan will be able to check the ether tablet while up here. And that may be a moment when you're thankful for not having the Master Sword. It's a little quicker to read that it's an arrow upgrade than to wait through that animation to see it.
Yep. We're still waiting on our boots, which I speculated would be very quick and have been wrong so far.
Well, we're still without either a crystal or pendant, so we're not too terribly far in as far as our completion is going to go, knowing that we're going to be collecting all 10 of them. But one of the things that is very helpful, I think, for Myriachan here is the collection of that mirror, which will allow, with the sword, will allow access to Mothula, and then a very quick pedestal check thereafter, so that both of our runners will be on equal footing as far as information is concerned.
We can only hope that Myriachan actually checks the pedestal. The other two medallions were eastern adjacent. One is in the back of Sahasrara's hut, and the other one is in eastern proper. Venno not taking the time to check Turtle Rock since he has all 3 medallions already.
We'll see some new information from Myriachan, trailblazing for us as finally our runners have access to Swamp Palace, making the dive back, headed straight to Mothula.
Mothula fight on 6 hearts. I am not confident enough in Mothula to do this, but
I'm certainly not either, and fortunate to have the half magic here. This fight would have been much more daunting on fighter sword alone. So already that little detour over to the half magic is paying dividends.
absolutely. Miri trying to conserve her magic. Nope, never mind. Just wanted to make sure she had a clean shot.
And thankful for this little small magic refill just prior to the Mothula fight, and it'll take either 8 fire rod shots, 8 fighter sword spins, or some combination thereof to bring down the moth here.
Moth can be damaged by just basic fire sword swipes, but that would take 16 swipes, which is not what you want to be doing.
And Myriachan making use of the red goo that I believe was what our waterfall fairy provided us with when a bottle was tossed in.
Oh
Ooh.
no. As we said, this is not easy to do.
Certainly not a very, very difficult fight on 6 hearts with this gear, especially in green mail. Those Mothula blasts that you're constantly dodging, 2 hearts apiece, very, very little margin for error. And the randomness of that fight, sometimes it doesn't really matter how well you control yourself. Those spikes are going to get you, or you're just going to get trolled by Mothula hitting a spike and taking no damage.
But Maria dipping out, which I don't blame at all. You want more hearts, you want better sword. You want one of those 2 before you go back into that fight.
Absolutely, and I'm with you there. There are times that 10 hearts tempered Mothula is still not something that I'm looking forward to. But we do have Myria now, fortunately, with the information on the pedestal, and knowing that this is a nearly all dungeon seat, as Venoxis takes the first steps into the back of Thieves Town to see what at least 3 of the 4 chests here have. Certainly, with the big key, those to pod already in hand, those small keys adding up will be increasingly valuable to possibly draw our runners in there. You really want the hammer before you make that dip so that the dungeon is potentially completable, but with the bow, that does give them access to substantially more of the dungeon on substantially fewer keys.
I would guess the big reason that Venoxis left Thieves Town earlier and only came back now was because he didn't have a sword. And while Cane of Burna is able to kill blind, it does take a lot of magic, and you do not want to be left with basically no ability to damage blind. just because you ran out of magic.
Venoxis clearing out the area around the maiden before checking this chest, and rewarded with just a compass for Eastern. Nothing too exciting down here, but maybe blind post transformation will have something that makes the trip a little more worthwhile.
Well, we know it's going to have something that makes the trip worthwhile in either a crystal or a pendant. Oh, definitely a crystal. Definitely a crystal.
And it looks like Venoxis taking the plan of going through this as quickly as possible within the little bit of lag Burna strats to finish it off for the safety.
You don't even need to swipe your sword there if you want to save even more frames. Burner will kill him by himself. And we have our first crystal on Veno's side. Myriachan following right behind.
And given how miserly this seed has been with giving our runners either extra health or a mail upgrade, that extra bottle that Blind gave us, definitely a nice thing to have. We've got the half magic, but, you know, it's not quite the same as red goo, and we don't have any powder, so having that bottle could certainly come in handy.
I suspect we're going to see a save and quit right after Ven grabs this. Oh, nope, never mind.
Well, Ven can now go and revisit Cave 45, or the South of Grove Cave, which was inaccessible earlier because of the lack of the mirror.
Right, and they will be able to check what the Bombos tablet is. Silver arrows.
Definitely worth the dip into the cave there, leaving the often complaining chest outside and picking it back up for the trip over to go home. And yeah, the Ganon fight now, we don't know what kind of sword we'll be using, but we know we won't be seeing Silverless, at least from Veno today, and with the mirror, Myriachan will probably pick those up before they're totally necessary.
Myriachan very low on magic, so not able to use the Burna strats. Also doesn't have the Burna.
Oh, an unfortunate death there. From behind, and then blind down at the bottom. Rough pinch to be in, and yeah, that with that Cane of Burna, definitely the trip to Eastern paying off for Veno here.
So neither of the tablets have anything important.
So it looks like what Literacy gave us today was access to our Moon Pearl and the knowledge that we were going to be here for a little bit, hunting down our tokens in all 10 of our dungeons.
It looks like Ven is taking the Ice Palace dip that chat seems to have suggested. Myriachan digging for more than just the item in the digging game. Digging for enough money for Zora, it looks like.
Yeah, and while we've seen both of our runners up in the Zora area, they had to be up there to collect their Titan's mitts. Neither runner was particularly close to the money to buy what the big fish was selling.
Yeah, without hammer, there are 3 total chests that it is impossible to get in Ice Palace. And Swamp Palace, despite having the small key, you can only get 1 chest without the hammer. Oh no, 2. You can get 2. I'm too used to open, where you can only get 1 item location without the hammer.
Oh, and we'll see now. Venno going to give us a peek at a new place. Neither of our runners having gone down into escape proper. We might see what's down in the last of the Sphere Zero locations as Myriachan grabs their silver arrows.
So what is left for our runners to do? Like, they can't get into Turtle Rock because they don't have the hammer.
Venno
They
finding the big key to Mire and Dark Escape, but yeah, without the hammer, can't get into Turtle Rock. Misery Mire area completely out of the question. We have access to Ice Palace. Swamp Palace is completable, though outside of Mothula, we know there's not much to be had there.
Swamp Palace completion requires hammer to get past the second chest.
I'm sorry, Skullwood's completion is on the table, but not Swamp Palace. So yeah, we have 2 chests in Swamp. And we now have the small key for Desert Palace. So there's 2 chests over there, but there's not a great deal of locations left.
I think it's got to be a choice between Pod and Ice Palace at this point. The 5 chests in Ice Palace are looking very good right this moment.
That's certainly true, as Venoxis hasn't yet found much of anything down here. That big key and Dark Escape notwithstanding, not a lot to be found in Escape so far. Those chests in Ice Palace, with as early as we were given the flippers and the fire rod, I would certainly feel as though I was being pointed there.
So this is where Ven makes his choice. Let's see where he goes.
Well, what we did forget is the oft-hated catfish. Neither of our runners has been up there, and as out of the way as it is, that is something we have access to. But in terms of chests per minute, certainly isn't the front runner.
This might be what Myriachan was setting up with her 500 pull, so that she could go grab Catfish and Zora at the same time.
That certainly takes a bit of the sting out of the catfish check. This just seems like a seed where you know it's all dungeons and you've had all of your normal trolley locations giving you nothing. This just seems like the sort of situation where really it's going to have been Zora the whole time. Just that early item that you had access to in the logic is really where you were supposed to be. But my projecting malevolence onto the seed notwithstanding, it certainly seems as though Pod, where we've got the big key as well as a couple of small keys, and Ice Palace would be the front runners for holding progression at this point.
Yep. We have the big key, but we actually, in logic, do not have the ability to get to the big key chest. And even if they find the hammer here, you really do not want to be going all the way to the back of the pod boss for fear of getting a soft lock.
Certainly, that soft lock definitely changes your calculus a little bit when you're navigating pod in this logic. Fortunately, they know that they are completely safe heading to these two chests here, as Venno is doing, with access to the bow. So these are completely accessible to them within logic, and we never know. Our progression could just be waiting for us here.
Oh, that is not something you want to see. A vanilla pod key. It feels like that happens up to 50% of the time in the seeds I've been watching or playing in. Like an absurdly large amount of the time with vanilla pod keys.
It's very frequent, but there are 14 chests here. But there's our ice rod, so there's a little bit of fear that we don't have to have, knowing that we will be going to Turtle Rock, and that makes me feel even more strongly that there's something about this seed that wants us to dip into Turtle Rock fairly quickly. And a Master Sword, the front of pod appears to be loaded.
This is a check I would do just assuming that I'm going to do bomb jump. If I couldn't or didn't know bomb jump, I would not be opening that door right there, personally.
That's often my last use of a key, but I'm certainly I do the bomb jump, but one that I'm not so fond of, and a small key to Castle Tower brings us one step closer to true all dungeon status, as Myriachan, I guess, gets a little more information with the map of Swamp Palace, so that maybe we can start to finally piece together where our pendants are going to be to track down that flute.
With that Castle Tower key and the Master Sword, it looks like Pod is packing the How to Aga pack.
Certainly, and we don't know where that small key to Aga goes, but it is always possible that that's really where a big chunk of our progression could lie.
Up to 2 items in that Aga Tower. Oh goodness, 2 of our swords in Pod.
Pod has not been a lot of whammies today. We found 2 swords, an ice rod, a vanilla key that let us delve just a little deeper, and we don't yet know where that mushroom's going to take us. The only bit of it that could be a whammy is, do our runners really want to go into Aga Tower? But now they do have access to both of the real items there, as well as once they got the boots, they could have access to that small key and lumberjack tree.
Very good bomb jump to skip a key in Palace of Darkness. Now it just needs to not die to these guys. Might be a tall order on just 2 hearts. Nope. Gets through the maze very, very quickly, very, very easily. Nothing important here, but again, peace of mind is worthwhile. Did we get a catfish check on Myriachan's side that I just completely missed?
We got a catfish check, but it was nothing too exciting. I believe it looked like some bombs, but I just kind of caught it out of the corner of my eye. But we are going to finally get to see our Zora check here. And Zora, about as exciting as catfish. 500 rupees for 10 arrows, though I guess at least they are silver.
Yep. Myria taking the no major glitches route, choosing not to save and quit. Which makes me think she's going to Ice Palace, honestly. Because that warp is right next to Ice Palace. Nope. I've just been calling it wrong all day.
Well, we will see Venno headed into Aga Tower to check at least, you would imagine, these first two chests with this newly tempered sword, and we'll see Myria off, opting to remain in the Dark World and possibly heading in that direction, but maybe needing to pick up something off the Lake Hylia Island, or
Oh, they are going to Ice Palace. They just... No, still wrong. What small key was that?
that was a small key to Misery Mire, the key that is taunting us because we know we're not going to be going there for at least 3 more completed dungeons.
So, Castle Tower, basically a dud. With that tempered sword, like, you go Skullwoods at this point, right? Like, you can complete Skullwoods. A tempered sword is, if you do any NMG, that is what you're used to doing Mothula fight.
Certainly, and you know, still looking for that hammer and narrowing down those locations. Mothula stands out as one that would certainly be a possibility for that, one would think. And getting through Skullwoods, Venno hasn't been into the back at all, so that's 2 relatively quick item locations, and that certainly could be a little more appetizing than that deep dive into Ice Palace looking for progression.
There might be, but I don't know that it's faster by much. I think Myriachan's route has been just fine, honestly. I forgot that they didn't have hammer, and if you want to go to the pod, it's a pain to get there.
I think one of the things that was the most painful for me starting the randomizer was certainly learning my way around the Dark World when missing items I would have had playing casually, and it looks like some of the lessons that I've still only kind of learned, Miri has taken and has long ago learned in terms of getting around the Dark World, because I often forget my way around even still.
I had a seed recently that taught me something about the Dark World, and that was... It required me to take the Dark World water whirl in order to get to East Dark World. No, West Dark World.
Is that a single lift upgrade? Or no, is that just flippers and no lift upgrade? What are you missing there? That's something.
It was flippers, no lift upgrade, Aga required.
And here we'll see Venno with a much easier, although still daunting in green mail fight, and just ekes it out through that spike, taking down Mothula. And Mothula had a whole lot of love for us, but maybe not the progression that Venno was looking for, apart from that red pendant getting us a third of the way to the flute.
I would be very happy to see that red pendant if I were Venno.
Flute on pedestal seems like one of those few times when you're a little more thrilled, honestly, at the end of a dungeon to see a pendant given to you, perhaps, than a crystal.
Yep.
And while we had an issue seeing it, given that Venno did the check, Venno will be knowing at this point exactly where that green pendant is, leaving only one unknown pendant that he'll have to find and collect to be able to find that flute from the pedestal, to be able to collect the flute from the pedestal.
I am not sure where Venno is going at this point. We can't clear Hera. He hasn't been up here, I guess. We do know that Hera is a crystal, based on the map check that Venno just had.
This may be Venno doing everything in his power to avoid dipping Ice Palace. Just that could be a little unpalatable in this current situation of, 9 hearts, green mail, maybe just not wanting to have to deal with the ordeal that Cold Stare can be.
What I'm expecting is either a dip into Ice Palace or a dip into Swamp is going to be required, and the Swamp dip would be more interesting, but it would also mean it's less likely that our runners are going to actually take it. It's just 2 chests. Basically not worth it.
2 chests and a lot of screen transitions for the mirror there.
Yep.
And I'll be interested to see if one of our runners opts to make a dip into desert now that we have that small key, because progression could. We certainly have more chests in Ice Palace, but per chest, I think progression is just as likely to be in desert at this point, and it's a long trip, but if you're the only one to make it, it could certainly pay off.
That is my suspicion as well, Carissa. Now I have no idea where Venom's going. I don't know of anything over here that's particularly useful right this moment.
I was wondering for a moment if we'd. I don't believe we've got the Thieves' Small Key. I'm not sure what Venno is missing over here, unless perhaps he's afraid that maybe Graveyard Ledge holds his progression, and this was his quickest route over there.
So there are 2 things that he could be doing from here. One is Graveyard Ledge and one is Swamp, because this is actually the only way to get into Dark World to get to Swamp. However, Graveyard Ledge does look like it's going to be the choice.
At least the first choice. He I suppose would have the option. Oh no, he's got no way back over there. Yeah, I guess it's going to be Graveyard Ledge, and we'll see what he opts for from there as Myriachan heads and hunts for some money, and is now headed back toward Kakariko Village.
Myriachan does not have enough, or did not have enough money to pay Kiki to open pod. Venno probably doing the disappointing route up here, though they will be. He will be able to check Mushroom on the way here.
That is something we've not seen. We know exactly how sad he's going to be outside of Mushroom, but maybe the witches have been brewing up something good today, a little better than 3 bombs or 10 arrows. It's really not a high bar to reach.
That's a pretty unfortunate place to place that portal. I don't know how he's going to get into the So, interestingly enough, one way he could have gotten in there, now that I think about it, is if you pick up an item you cannot warp. So he could have dropped either a cane block or a bomb and walked through the port. Ooh, goodness! Boots!
Pod even more loaded than we realized at the time. That is a huge pickup for Veno. Number of options have just opened themselves up to him, as well as just the ability to move quickly. And given he's been trying carefully to avoid any sort of dip into Ice Palace, it could be that these boots are, inspiration to immediately check King's Tomb and Bonkrogs rather than pushing in there. And Myriachan has come back with a vengeance and brought down Blind to collect her first crystal.
Yep. The big thing that these boots open is that big key in Desert Palace, which means that Desert Palace is even more worth dipping than it was before. If only by one chest.
And it's certainly a less painful dip than it was now that we're getting there so much faster. That could weigh into his calculus as well.
I choose 2 items and a guaranteed big key over 5 items, right? That's what I would choose.
I certainly think so, especially given you know that big key is going to be useful, and we're kind of starved for him right now. The few we've got are not particularly useful to us at this time. Least of all that Misery Mire key.
Myriachan, I could very much, since she hasn't checked the graveyard ledge yet, it's very possible that she will, if she doesn't goes into pod, she'll be able to put those 2 checks together.
And Veno getting very close to the information needed to at least discern, while less important perhaps in this seed, but to be able to discern what's what. We've got, with the map to Turtle Rock, when he performs a map check, he'll have a little more information as Miri is headed back in for some revenge, and Veno checks Bonk Rock.
We have big key to Turtle Rock and Bonk Rocks. But still no hammer.
And it's reached a point where that has to be uniquely frustrating for both of these runners, that there are so many locations that early on the game has given you a clue that you might need to dip in here earlier than usual. We've gotten a ton of Turtle Rock keys. We've got all the medallions, the big key, the small key to Swamp Palace, and we just can't get the hammer to give us access to any of those.
As I said before, with the rule of 3, Turtle Rock is completable with 3 small keys.
And we will have Veno returning to Desert to pick up the 3 items he couldn't before, as Myriachan's tied up those loose items, and is gonna be headed towards some new destination here shortly.
This is small, but I think I would take the other route through this through Desert, with going to get the big key and then checking these 2 chests, but I don't know that it makes that big of a difference.
Maybe he just knew that those 2 chests were going to be trash and is putting off the good item for last.
Completely reasonable. Vanilla. It is a vanilla big key.
Normally that is a wildly trolly item, but big key in place of small key is incredibly beneficial. And another big key.
Looking at the restream because I could not see what that was. Swamp Palace big key. So not required necessarily, but that's our second peace of mind. That's actually our fourth peace of mind from Veno.
That's some peace of mind I would certainly be happy to have in this situation, as Veno, where you know that with everything you're going to have to do regardless, you're not going to have to double dip swamp.
It's a good key dash there. I'm a little embarrassed to say that I only just learned that key dash.
And Veno's making his way through desert as now, after a little bit of rupee farming and taking down 2 bosses in frustration, Myriachan moving into Palace of Darkness, see what route she chooses to take.
You say that, Carissa, but especially here where there's just slightly more items required for this, a Keysanity is all about the double dips, and if you can stop not having to do a double dip, that makes a big difference.
I had honestly not even considered the possibility of double dipping swamp because of a key blocking hammer. I guess I just don't have it in me to wish that much ill on our runners, but that is certainly a possibility that they will have to account for as Veno finishes off his Landmo fight.
For Crystal, unfortunately.
It's so unusual hearing a forlorn note in your voice as you say that it's for a crystal, but knowing what we know about the mobility our runners will have once they get to that flute, it really is a more exciting proposition at this point to find a pendant, and we'll now get to see Myriachan go and collect some items from the back of pot and see if they lead her to the boots and then eventually a full clear of Desert Palace as well, or if she'll take a different route entirely.
There is one item that Veno didn't check that Myriachan might, and that's Harmless Hellway. Is Veno headed to Swamp? Like, I don't know of any overworld dungeons that are worthwhile. Sorry, overworld checks that are worthwhile at this point. You have to choose Swamp or Ice, and it looks like Ven's choosing Swamp for just 2 items as opposed to the 5 from Ice.
Meanwhile, we see Myriachan opts not to hammer jump, so there will be one key greater required for her to complete pod than Veno. But if you're a little uncertain on the jump or don't like to break sequence, then certainly understandable, given we'll definitely be finding those keys as we clear all dungeons.
Presumably, Carissa, Veno does know what the where the green pendant is. It is faster to bail if it fails, but it takes longer to set up. And a double dip into swamp, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, Carissa, now that you say it. It is not the move I would make. That does not mean it's it was the wrong move. Myriachan looks like... Yeah, Myriachan is headed to ice. So we are going to see very quickly which of these is the best choice.
As Veno checking the last possible chest for in here without hammer, and finds that other useless map we were talking about.
I don't know why he didn't mirror out here. Looks like he doesn't either.
He might have been a little frustrated after finding, of all maps, the Hyrule Castle map in that last chest he could access. You know, maybe kicking himself a little bit for that routing all around the world to get into Swamp, but certainly will be able to almost immediately get into Ice, so not really going to cost him too much time.
Bomb upgrade is the first chest in Ice Palace. We have 4 more to go. Veno is going to have the upside that he has boots, which is going to make all of these ice rooms a lot easier for him to progress through.
So being somewhat unsure of the logic myself, coming in here with no keys and what they have, are there any items that they will be checking that would be out of logic for them?
The only item with no keys, the only items that are not in logic are the big key chest and the final boss, Cold Stare. Every other item is obtainable without doing the bomb jump and with no keys, because of the keys that are in there. But you do need hookshot in order to do that.
Okay, thank you. I knew some of them were. I knew that a great number of them were out of logic, or a good number of them without hookshot, but I wasn't sure quite the situation. So that does give them quite a number of locations to check here that that the logic would expect them to have access to, as well as potentially Cold Stare out of logic, but holding a 5/6 crystal. It looks like,
Myriachan, go ahead.
it looks like Veno has now changed his mind, I guess. I thought he was going to not do the bomb jump, given he was expecting to full clear the place and had Cane, but looks like that's not the case.
So if you're not in if you're in open, it makes sense not to do the bomb jump when you have Cane, especially with half magic. But in Keysanity, it doesn't really. I think the reason they're doing the bomb jump here is because you can very much expect that hammer is going to be one of these items. So if one of these items is hammer, then you will need to go back to Cold Stare, and doing that bomb jump is the only way to get back.
That makes perfect sense, and I hadn't even considered it.
Benno unfortunately runs out of hearts doing the bomb jumps, so he will definitely have to double dip here.
That's one of the other unfortunate side effects of having green mail. And there's the hammer for Myriachan in the iced tea room. You get very few tries on green mail, but the whole world has just opened up.
More importantly, the whole dungeon has just opened up. Three items are hammer locked and one is big key locked. The big chest is actually not hammer locked.
So the question now becomes: is there anything else that Ice Palace is holding out on our runners, or are they going to be able, or are they just going to find the hammer here and be sent on their ways with a crystal, and then have to walk out into the world with about 1 million options ahead of them?
We are about to find out with Myriachan checking here. Benno, unfortunately, is not going to be able to get to Cold Stare because all of the keys and you need at least a big key and a small key to get Cold Stare. And I think they may end up with a extra small key, but they will not have the big key required to get to Cold Stare without a bomb jump.
Though I suppose the option would exist for him to reach the progression point that he can, mirror out, and just go ahead and finish Cold Stare knowing he must, but or take a death warp back to the front of the dungeon to restock a little bit. But he knows he's got to come back one way or the other, so we'll have to see if he opts to do it now or later.
Someone in chat bringing up that we now know where all of the item go mode items are with that hammer pickup. The big question is, what big keys are we missing?
My quick answer to that question is many.
So we have Turtle Rock Big Key, Mire Big Key, we've done Thieves Town and Swamp Palace. We have the Pod Big Key. Logic requires Ice Palace Big Key, but neither of these runners are going to be requiring that. So Tower of Hera and Eastern Palace is what I count.
We will, of course, also be needing that elusive Ganon's Tower Big Key at some point.
Yes. However, to get to Ganon's Tower, what we're missing is just 2 keys.
As well as, I believe, 1 small key for Pod for Venno, and I believe a minimum of 2 small keys for Myriachan. So with the cane so early, access to all three medallions, and 3 Turtle Rock small keys, as well as the big key in hand, it looks as though Venno's ready to find out what the medallion is for Turtle Rock and to take it to Trinex as quickly as he can, while Myriachan's making her first dip into Swamp.
Yep. To be clear, Swamp has 10 chests, 10 item locations in Swamp. Turtle Rock has 12, and for Veno, the swamp is actually only 8, so it actually makes a lot more sense for Veno to go... Like, it makes sense for both of these runners to be dipping into the dungeons that they're dipping into. So the item number locations for all of the Light World dungeons are 6. All of the Dark World dungeons, I think every single one has a unique item number. If you count Skullwoods as 7 instead of 8, since one of those locations is not required and guaranteed to be a small key. "14, 10,
I
8,
think
7.
I think Thieves and Ice might both have 8.
You're right. Thieves and Dice both have 8. But oh, and Meyer also has 8.
And finally, at long last, an hour and 32 minutes into this seed, there's been a little bit more of that peace of mind for Veno, who has finally found a mail upgrade for one of our runners, who still haven't cracked that second row of hearts and have been having to do all of these Dark World dungeons with green mail.
That is true. If Veno just happens to know that this is the green pendant, that makes a lot of sense to go here before going elsewhere. Wow, both mail upgrades in the first 3 chests of Turtle Rock.
Well, that's something that sub 10 hearts headed into a room of chain jobs has to make you feel a little better. But
Goodness, I still hate that room. I don't die in it anymore, but that is my least favorite room in the entire game.
oh, meanwhile, the small key to Thieves, Myriachan's just found over in Swamp Palace, and that is a potentially problematic item because that one chest in Thieves Town could certainly have one of the big keys we're looking for in it, but with the slight hiccup for Myriachan being that she doesn't have that Swamp Palace big key that Veno was able to pick up over in Desert Palace, and as such, we'll be leaving one question mark in the back of her mind as she leaves here.
We'll see if that makes a difference. Again, we're still waiting on those 3 big keys. Mail upgrades, while nice, are not enough will not help you finish the seed. Veno, I suspect, is going to be stealing the key here. However, that red mail did not come a moment too soon, because Veno would not have survived that room in green mail.
Certainly not the damage you can take in Turtle Rock in even in blue mail it adds up very, very quickly.
Yep.
And unfortunately for Myriachan, there appears not to be a whole lot going on the left side of Swamp. So that's one of those unfortunate time sinks that when it doesn't pay out, you really kind of feel it.
We just had a map check, and Turtle Rock is a crystal. So, Venno dipping into Turtle Rock solely for those 12 item locations, I believe. Well, 11.
Given that, I'm inclined to believe that Eastern Palace is likely vanilla green pendant there. He doesn't want to risk soft locking, so he wouldn't want to complete pod until he finds that fourth small key. But without that Eastern Palace big key, that seems like a pretty likely spot for the green pendant, and therefore flute to be.
Yep. Tower of Hera big key in Turtle Rock. So that'll be a very easy dip right after finishing this.
And it does reduce the number of items that we're looking for by one. We're down to just a couple of big keys, and assuming they're tracked down, Venno will know he doesn't need any more small keys for pod.
On 3 hearts, I very much like this play of opening this.
Certainly there's it's not always so easy. Oh, the small key to Tower of Hera makes that dungeon fully clearable, but yeah, he'll have much easier access to
Turtle Rock is the play. It has both of the big keys that we needed.
Venno now with the presence of mind after tracking down that key to cane himself over to the last key, and then take a death to reset some hearts there at his safety door as Myriachan grabs her crystal from Argus.
So we are just waiting on Ganon's tower information to be able to... Ganon's tower big key to be able to complete everything. We had Hera's tower big key, Hera's tower small key, Tower of Hera big key, Tower of Hera small key, and Eastern Palace big key, all in Turtle Rock. All three of those keys were in Turtle Rock.
And it looks like after all that we've been through, there was a reason that this seed gave our runners so much for Turtle Rock so early after all, and that was once they tracked down the hammer, it appears to have had just about all the answers. And with that much access to the world in front of him, you'd have to imagine Venno's probably not feeling like it's going to be quite so much trouble to track down that one key he may or may not need to Palace of Darkness on his way through the rest of these dungeons, especially now that he has access to all of Eastern, which seems likely to be the green pendant.
I think this pretty comfortably puts Venno in the lead, with him being able to, him having the boots over Myriachan and being able to clear Hera. This will put him probably a dungeon ahead. Right now they're tied on dungeons? No. I don't know why he's save and quit there. Did he realize he had the keys required to finish Pod and Eastern Palace?
It looks like that's the case. Yeah, I think that in some ways the way that the routing worked out for Venno here has served him well, as he's he was able to get to that mushroom where Myriachan got the mushroom, was still desperate for the hammer, and just took that immediate path into Ice Palace. Not turning in that mushroom has cost her access to that Desert Palace big key in its French vanilla location, and a lot of options just aren't yet available to her.
It does look like she is about to go to the potion shop based on letting go of that bee, though. Oh, nope, nope, she's throwing a bottle into this fountain.
I will say that that free bottle refill is something that I never learned during my casual playthroughs of the game when it was actually useful, or even more useful. It's certainly useful now to save money and give you some safety, but that was something I learned only after I started playing Rando. It's astonishing what I've learned about this game, and Myriachan certainly putting it to good use, as she's not yet gotten either of those mail upgrades that Benno found in Turtle Rock.
Now I see why Benno decided not to go into Hera. I think he realized that he would be able to do every single other dungeon um, other than Hera, and could grab Hera on his way to GT.
Now that's certainly a massive time saver. Every trip you can save yourself up and down the mountain is a huge advantage, especially when you're having to traverse from west Death Mountain to east and then back across.
Myriachan going to turn in that mushroom, I'm pretty sure here. And I don't know that she's going to be happy to see these boots.
No, given she's had that mushroom and then had those issues with her rupee count that delayed her, you'd have to think she would have expected to have would have expected Venno to have the boots for quite a while.
So that mushroom was in pod. I don't know how long she's had it, because was she just in pod?
She has been to ice and swamp since she was in pod, and she planned on going to pod earlier with the same number of keys, but was just a little shy on rupees, and so that caused a delay in that, which uh, might cause her to have gotten them even later than she would have expected.
So now we're just waiting on that GT key. I don't know if you guys know this, but for some reason, a very large percentage of my commentating races that I commentate have a required GT key check, and I am not a fan of that. I'm sure that the runners that I commentate are also not a fan of that.
Well, I know that given it's only 2 chests, I believe that Pyramid Fairy has a disproportionate rate, but we didn't see that today, so I would say that at this point, on any given location, we're down to Meyer and Ganon's Tower itself as where we would expect to see that key.
We have, what, 4 locations in Tower of Hera that could have it as well? So 4 locations in Tower of Hera, 8 in Meyer.
Which is almost like 11, given checkerboard and the shed.
Yeah.
Myriachan with those boots has gotten her Desert Palace big key and likely to head back to Lanmos now as Venno quickly polishes off Armos Knights.
So if you're Venno and you just got that last Dark Palace key, do you check Harmless Hellway before going elsewhere? I mean, this is out of the way.
It looks like the answer is probably not, as he dipped in and back out, but it would certainly be tempting. Just knowing that it's there, it's one place, but I think that he's got this other location on his mind, and probably those 4 chests you were mentioning in Hera and those Misery Mire locations are what's really weighing on his mind right now.
So we have, at this point, you said 8 plus 22 plus 6. That's 36 locations left. Sorry, 37 locations left that for Venno, but 36 for us. That could be that Ganon's Tower big key.
Now, one that does that account for the vanilla big key chest in Turtle Rock? Because that's probably the worst case for Venno that Ganon's Tower big key could be hiding out right now.
Yes, but that also, like, that's only a bad case for Venno if Myriachan checks it.
That's certainly true. Well, that's probably the worst case for our runners, I'll phrase it that way.
Yeah. Remember, everyone, it's only bad if your opponent got it first. That does not include shed and checkerboard, so that's 39 in fact. 39 locations for the Ganon's Tower big key to be. And I suspect it'll be 22 by the time we actually get to Ganon's Tower.
I think the last one that we didn't include in that might be Spike Cave. I don't believe Venno checked that. We got the hammer so late.
I am sad that we're on Myriachan and not Venno's music right now, so we don't get to hear the Swag Duck anthem.
There'll be another chance. It's just to keep us on our toes for when she makes it around to collect her flute.
Of course. Thanks, KK. If you have been enjoying watching this, enjoying our commentary, do give a follow out to our runners. And this takes a lot of planning to get set up. And we cannot do it without our tracker, KKD Egyptian, and our restreamer Duke Firebird. So give all of our runners and all of our tech crew a follow.
And also certainly give a follow to my co-commentator D2 Chems once you're done with those, as I've been carried through this and am
And
eternally grateful.
Stambra, of course. Like, give us follows too. I mean, we would like it. If you've enjoyed our commentary, feel free to drop us a follow to tell us how much you've enjoyed it.
I will also accept. I'll also accept hate mail. That's fine too.
Yeah, I mean, tell us what we're doing wrong. We'll get better.
And finally, an hour and 52 minutes in, we're going to get our first look inside the Misery Mire area that we knew was locked behind a tremendous amount from very early on.
So, the logic requires that the Ice Palace Big Key not be in Ganon's tower. And we've checked a lot of other places. Where do you think it could possibly be at this point? Like, my money is here. In here, we're going to find at least one, if not two, big keys.
I think we're really down. We're down to basically here, Hera, Turtle Rock. This is certainly the highest density we've got left. But to be contrarian, I'm going to say that it is in Tower of Hera. And we know right now what Veno. It looks as though Veno is taking sort of the most efficient distances between chests that he can muster, in an effort to avoid doing this vanilla big key chest, hoping to just track down that last outstanding Ganon Tower big key so that he can go mode the rest of the dungeons he'll be running through.
It does not look like it is meant to be, though.
Well, would it really? Did you really watch a rando seed unless you got to see all of the stand still and watch this wall move animations?
This is the best one. In that nothing actually happens, and we just stare at the screen shaking a little bit.
You do get a little more action from a Quake medallion activation than this. And we see on the left of our screen, Myriachan also opting to steal that key. So if there is something over there, which would at this point, I believe, have to be the Ganon's Tower big key, it is likely to troll our runners for some time.
I think that play might have been Myriachan's last chance to catch up, unfortunately. Because I don't see a circumstance where she checks a location that Veno's not going to check first, except for that location.
That does seem likely to be the case when it is specifically that Ganon's Tower big key outstanding, and there was so much of the seed that our runners had to tear through before finding that hammer. There are just so few item locations left that it does create a difficult situation if you're trying to play from behind. That, of course, not knowing where your opponent is, it leaves you in a difficult state of risk making position, but
The shovel was just found, KK. As I'm sure you know since you're tracking it. Yep.
Well, we found the small key to ice, but it's looking as though Hera may just be the spot for the big key. Or that could be what's hiding behind in that vanilla big key chest there in Turtle Rock.
We may get our 100% checked seed. Well, except for GT Big Chest. There's not anything that could possibly be in there, right? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, there can't be anything of a value greater than a magic cape or powder in there, neither of which is going to be required.
Yeah, at this point. It is possible to have a seed that requires Ganon's GT Big Chest, because either bow and arrow or hookshot is able to be in there. It's just not this seed.
I think this seed may have put our runners through enough on its own. Fortunately, they will both get to, when Myriachan gets here, they will both get to go into Vitreous armed with the bow and silver arrows, which makes for a nice, clean, relaxing fight.
You know, unless he hits you in the face with the lightning bolt. Wow, that is 3 arrows left for Veno.
That's a little close, but had a couple to spare. Get 3/4 of the way through Ganon as we are right now. Getting up the tower might not so much, but
It was very fun. We found out within the first 5 minutes that every single pendant or crystal dungeon was going to be cleared.
And it looks like for Veno, he wants this to be a single trip up Death Mountain and not interested in any repeats. Somehow I'd forgotten he hadn't done Swamp. Yeah, so he's headed to Swamp, and then we'll have easy access to the Pyramid Fairy if he's so inclined.
Which, I mean, I would be. This is going to be the fastest check into that directly from Swamp. The fact that it ends up being nothing is doesn't really matter. He also has to finish Ice. So Myriachan not as far behind as we had speculated, but still probably not in the lead.
Right, I think for Myriachan, something like Ice Palace Big Chest or that Vanilla Turtle Rock Big Chest is probably where that Ganon's Tower Big Key would likely need to be. Although you never know how exactly people will route once they get into GT. A tile room gamble could pay off or something like that.
Yep. The other big thing is if it's in Tower of Hera and Veno checks every other location, Myriachan is going to be able to go mode a lot of these dungeons that Veno is not able to go mode. Like, she may be able to run through, Mire without checking a single chest.
That's certainly true, and the two dungeons that Venno has left are not the shortest. Even just heading straight to Cold Stare, Ice Palace is not a super short trip. Not in the way that a already armed with Big Key straight to Vitreous Misery Mire is.
That is something I forgot about. Has anyone checked, Thieves Town Small Key area, chest yet?
That has not yet been checked. That key, I believe, was that an Ice Palace?
No, it was in Swamp Palace. I always thought about it because Venno just grabbed it.
My apologies. Well, it looks like all of our outstanding heart containers were in Tower of Hera.
Was that 3 heart containers in Tower of Hera?
It's been at least 2.
Very clean, Troll Dorm fight from Myriachan. But no payoff.
And unfortunately, that Tower of Hera not holding our GT Big Key significantly reduces the number of locations outside of Ganon's Tower where it could be. We were already kind of hanging by a thread on the number of locations we had, but the likelihood that it is in fact in the tower itself is quite high with what remains.
We're missing. We still haven't checked Thieves Town Big Chest, and I'm having a hard time thinking of anywhere else that we haven't checked.
We've got Thieves Big Chest, Ice Big Chest, which we don't have the key for. So it has to be occupying one of the locations outside of Ganon's Tower. I don't believe either runner has done Spike Cave, though I could be wrong. And
I don't believe so either. Yeah.
and the last other location would be that vanilla Turtle Rock Big Key chest. Though since neither runner has found a fourth Turtle Rock Small Key, I have to imagine that that's eating away at one of our 4 locations as well, outside of Ganon's Tower.
Yes. So we have what, 5 locations left? Is that 5? Spike Cave, Thieves Big Chest, Ice Big Chest, Dig Spot, and last chest of Turtle Rock. Yeah, that's 5. And of those 5, 3 of them are forced to be the opening of 2 of the others. No, 2 of them are forced to be openings for 2 of the others.
And because this was an almost all dungeon seed, we have to have the 6th pod key as well.
Yep. Venno has found all 6 keys. 100%. Oh, no. He did, hammer jump. Never mind. I could have sworn Myriachan checked Harmless Hellway. Am I just misremembering that?
I don't believe she did, because on their first dip, I believe they both went in with 2 keys and found a third, and Myriachan did not hammer jump. And also opened the chest with the bomb out floor, the vanilla Big Key chest.
Oh, but remember there was a Dark Palace small key on Armos Knights.
And that's the key that that's the key. Oh, yeah.
That's got to be the sixth key because Veno didn't use it, and Veno checked or had nope. That's the fifth key because Veno had gained the ability to do Harmless Hellway with that, but chose not to.
But we have seen Veno now collect all of the both crystals required for his Pyramid Fairy. We'll see if he opts to do that after finishing up Ice Palace, which looks like his next destination. And it looks as though Myriachan is going to head down to this South Dark World access point and head in an effort to finish up Pod. We'll see if maybe we get a harmless Hellway check from her now.
We're coming up on our second attempt at the bomb jump with 14 hearts as opposed to the 3 that he had before, and 24 bombs. So I suspect Veno's not going to have trouble here.
This seems like a much easier bomb jump to execute, and he is without. He is also no longer in green mail, so these jumps won't hurt nearly as bad. And coming in with sword beams is a whole different experience.
Myriachan looks like she is not going to be checking the Harmless Hellway. So it is the hallway with 3 spikes that would be a hellway if you ever had to go past those 3 spikes, but you don't.
And it looks as though Miria is trying to figure out what the best route here in Pod is.
I am confused as to why she's death warping.
I am a bit as well, but I'm
She
sure she's
is checking the hellway. She's gonna use the key to check the hellway and then hard reset.
That makes sense.
It's in pod. Lyra SRL.
That is a clever use of a death warp.
It's this room we're about to see.
What do we have? Big 3 hundo. Not quite what she was looking for.
However, for the first time this seed, Myriachan is the one with the peace of mind. And it is very possible that Veno is going to be going back to Pod to check that location.
Certainly, if heading into Ganon's Tower, knowing that there were locations that you were given ample opportunity to check and haven't done so, sometimes you just want to play the odds and head in, but it's all the more painful if you spend those many minutes hunting inside only to return to a location that's just a few seconds to check.
To be fair, I realized what she was doing prior to the reset. Voligen.
We'll now find out where it is that Venoxis is going to head after collecting that last dungeon token required for this very nearly all dungeon seed. We're going to kill Aghanim once anyway. I'm comfortable calling it all dungeons.
Yeah. Out of magic because she used an anti-fairy to do that death warp, so she's forced to push the block. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, that one has to hurt a little bit when you've got Kana Samaria. But fortunately, once she's taken down Helmasaur King, he will reward her with full magic bar and fresh set of hearts to figure out where she wants to head next.
And the ability to get her flute.
Oh, that old thing.
And if she remembers she has the Thieves Town small case, she might be able to check that while she's in the Village of Outcasts area.
I certainly don't know that she's going to find herself with a better opportunity to do that than while she's right there. None of the remaining locations we have outside of GT, where that GT Big Key could be, are in any way close to Thieves Town, but collecting the flute is about the last close opportunity she'll have.
Venno is not checking there and is opting to go to Ganon's tower, it looks like. He might be checking Spike Cave up here.
Yeah, I think his plan is probably to go ahead and check Spike Cave and then route around from west to east and back around to go into tower, expecting that from there he'll enter Ganon's tower if no key is found here.
So Myriachan finishes up Pod, which opens up Misery Mire for her. She already finished Turtle Rock, right?
I think she did, yes, because we saw her opt not to go through that vanilla big key door.
Yeah. It happens, KK. Where are you headed, Myriachan? Nope. Okay.
Miria will finally collect this flute, and then we will have what I know she's been waiting for all seed. And meanwhile, we'll find out if Venno has any interest in checking anywhere once he's out of Tower of Hera, which is difficult to fathom. And if Myriachan will make that dip into the basement of Thieves Town for us and let us know what's in that one last chest.
Myria, inquiring minds want to know. What's in Thieves Town?
It's probably 20 rupees, but it'd be great if we could know that for sure.
So it's actually much higher percentage chance for thanks, Duke Firebird. It's much higher percentage chance for it to be either Ice Palace Big Key or another Dark Palace Small Key.
I believe that the sixth pod key was the item that we found in Spike Cave. So we're down to Ice Palace Big Key, and I think that's Turok Small Key are the two keys that we're certain of, just waiting out there in the world for us, somewhere outside of Ganon's Tower. So two of those locations that we have left are keys, and we know to be keys, and two are not. And I think, let's see, we could have. So our key, we can safely say at this point that our key on Lumberjack Cave is either a Ganon's Tower Big Key or a Turtle Rock Big Key. I think those are the last options that we
Lumberjack
have.
Cave was a small key, not a big key.
I'm sorry, Small Key. I believe it's either Turtle Rock or Ganon's Tower, if I'm not mistaken. Although I guess we do have one outstanding from Ice Palace too.
If if it's anything other than a Ganon's Tower key, that means that one of the locations that we haven't checked has to be the cape. Oh, no, no, no. I am completely wrong. I was thinking about Bumper Cave. Ignore everything I just said. Veno didn't check the dig spot, did he?
He did not. Dig Spot is one of those locations that we still have out there in the world.
I have never seen this opened offset like this.
There are 22 chests inside of Ganon's Tower. One or none of them has the Ganon's Tower Big Key.
Which do you think it is, chat? My guess is 17.
I'm a big proponent of 13 at all times. Alright, Duke, you can have 13. I'll take 0, actually, in this case.
There's now 3 locations outside of Ganon's Tower that could have the key, because they just got the powder. And I am ready for that required Ganon's Tower double dip.
It is a beautiful experience when that happens. Three is a map.
4 is $20, 5 is $20, 6 is a heart piece.
Now, what will we have waiting for us on Bob's torch?
A useless cape. A useful cape, apparently. A cape is very useful with half magic on Ganon, so I don't...
I think that 4-second bonk, just as an insurance policy, should Veno be going into Ganon at low health but substantial magic, is very reasonable.
think it's very uncommon to go into Ganon at low health, especially now that they have the powder.
It does seem much more unlikely now than it would have if he'd started left side. And there it is.
That was 9?
10?
I believe it was 9. Because he had one more chest left in that room.
The 2 on the right, the 4 on the right, 6, 7 for Bob's torch, 8,
I missed
9,
Bob's
10.
torch. Yeah, I missed Bob's torch, so definitely 10. So if you guessed 10, which I know none of you did, you win a all expenses paid trip to go mode.
Wow. I assume it's not at the time of your choosing. It's
No,
when we decide.
it's redeemable only for this seed. So we'll go ahead and say that the real winner is Venom.
That sounds about right. Meanwhile, as Venno was grabbing that big key, Miria has saved and quit and came back to Mountain Cave in an effort to get to the Dark World and do some key hunting of her own.
She has tower access. If she goes directly left side, this might come down to execution. Because she is going to GT.
Yeah, she took care of Tower of Hera some time ago.
Dark Magician strats will win you some time, Myriachan. Nope. That is a lot of magic that Venno is using. Does he have potion?
I don't know if he does or not. Though I believe with just that little small magic refill and half magic, that'll be enough caning to get through this floor, though it does become a little dicier from there. Or at least through the whiz robes.
The big question is the four lamps rune. And it looks like he has enough.
Yep, and with a full refill here, it'll be no stress on the lamps on the next floor.
So this race, much closer than I expected, to be honest. Oh no, she's going full right side.
Well, that, you know, at 2, she entered the tower at about 2:22, seeing nobody had finished. Maybe her expectation was Venno probably already in the tower and take a risk, but unfortunately this is not a risk that will pay off today. Meanwhile, Veno tracked down Buttersword there in the mini Helmasaur room and uses that to make very quick work of Moldorm 2.
I wouldn't have even been checking chests at this point, so because I don't think Buttersword is a significant enough time save over Tempered for the time it takes to check the chests. But in this case, it looks like it will be. I believe KK is referring to the room that most people bonk to get to the mid. There is a statue you're supposed to move to reveal a star that will let you get across. There is, however, a location that I am unsure how the game intended you to get to if it wasn't bonks. There is a bonk cracked wall that you have to bonk to get to in Ganon's Tower that has 2 fairies behind it.
I imagine that one has to just be intended bonks, because there's just literally not another way.
Is it possible that you have to press the star button somewhere in the castle, not mirror, and then walk up there to get it?
It sounds plausible. I don't know. There's so much. Well, we have Venoxis in Ganon. I don't want to take away from Ganon's spotlight here. Speculating.
Of course. So with Butter Sword, Ganon takes 8 swipes in the first 2 stages, 4 swipes in the 3rd stage, and just 4 silver arrow hits.
And just like that, you can about blink, and you'll see Veno entering Phase 3, getting a little trolled with Ganon's teleports, getting some fire bats out.
He's surviving though. Everything is fine. It was close to validation butter. I believe it was in the last mini Helmasaur room before the end. He actually didn't check validation chest.
And Veno sinks the final arrow into Ganon.
Venoxis kills Ganon and finishes in first place with a official SRL time of 2 hours, 29 minutes, and 45 seconds. GG, Venoxis. Let's see if we can get him in here.
Meanwhile, with as close as this race turned out, we've got Myriachan already through the gauntlet, climbing up on her way to her Ganon fight. And heading into the Wizrobe rooms in a much more favorable position with the magic that she has than after Veno's Landmole 2 fight.
Yeah, that's enough magic to do the Wizrobe rooms. Use only a Fire Rod on the next room and the room after and never get a full refill. And that's exactly what Miri is going to do.
Yeah, just blazing through the top half of Ganon's tower. You don't want to ever have to see the basement, but when you do, you're just all the more ready to get the top part over with. And she opts out of checking this Helmosaur chest, and so we'll be fighting Ganon armed only with Tempered, which I think is about what you're hoping for when you go into your Ganon fight. It's just a luxury to have butter.
Yep. Hello, Venoxis and GG.
What's going on, GG? That was something else.
How did you feel knowing that you would need to do every single pendant and crystal dungeon at the very beginning of the game?
I felt pretty good once I knew that, just because I was like, you know, I had to double check, like, really what it was. I was like, okay, I know what this is. So then, you know, from then on, I was just like, I really need to do everything, and like, the worst thing about that whole seed was just Ice Palace for me. Like, if I could have just did that bomb jump the first time and not messed up, I could have cleared it. And because I knew Hammer was going to be there, because I cleared everything else, including the first part of Swamp. So I was like, well, if it's in Swamp, then I can clear Swamp. If it's not in Swamp, it's got to be an Ice Palace. Then I can clear Ice Palace. So
It was unfortunate to see that the failed bomb jump in Ice Palace. Fortunately for us, it made the race a little bit closer. When you were both in Ganon's tower at the same time.
oh well.
Myriachan is as we speak entering the Ganon fight.
Oh, that was pretty close. Yeah, I know, like, I made some pretty awful decisions. Like, for about 45 minutes, I had no sword. So I went into Thieves with the big key, and I was like, well, if I get a sword, then I can clear it. And then it was a sloppy fight. I was just, man. And then I went into Skull Woods, and I was like, well, I could clear this, but I gotta come back anyway for the pedestal. But then it was like the routing didn't work out like that because I needed to check everything. So I was like, well, let me go to Skull Woods. Maybe Mothula has Hammer for some reason. And then he didn't. Because sometimes, like, in a ped seed, I'll save Mothula until I actually pull the ped. But I could have played it like that, but I just didn't. And then
it
I
would have
checked.
been difficult to route that, to be honest.
Yeah, knowing that, you know, not knowing where Hammer was, you know, you got to take the chance on stuff. And then I checked, like, Fat Fairy, I checked Spike Cave, and it was, yeah, unnecessary, because I was like, well, it could be in Ganon's Tower, or it could be at, like, Thieves Town, Big Chest, could be the chest I skipped in Turtle Rock, or the chest in Pod.
I'm gonna have to interrupt you because Myriachan is also finishing right now.
Alrighty.
And Myriachan finishes with in second place with an official SRL time of 2 hours, 35 minutes, and 43 seconds.
GG to Myriachan.
Hello?
Hello, Myriachan. How are you doing?
I'm okay.
How did you like that seed?
Oh my god, I hated that seed. So that's my second pedestal seed in a row. The other seed I lost in was also a pedestal seed.
That is unfortunate, especially in Keysanity.
So I lost a lot of time there defending myself against a possible soft lock. There's a bug in the randomizer where if you don't open all of the chests in Dark Palace and then you go beat Elmasaur with your last key, that you can get into a soft lock. So I had to check for that. I had to protect myself against that by saving. At the same time, sorry, go ahead.
We were actually very impressed by that, the save and reset strats there, because we actually hadn't seen the GT Big Key at that point, and Venoxis hadn't checked that particular chest yet.
Yeah, I definitely skipped that chest. That was one of the things I was thinking about too. I was like, man. But I want to say I picked up 2 other keys, so I was safe in that regard later on.
So yeah, the weird thing I did where I killed myself, saved, and reset, and all that was all because of the bug in the randomizer where. In this version of the randomizer, where you can soft lock there, and if it were an important item like the Ganis Tower big key right there, then I would have been screwed and soft locked if I had just gone to Helmasaur.
So the Helmasaur softlock, I should just clear this up. It only happens if a required item to finish the seed that is not behind the Ganon's Tower Big Key is behind there, because in order for the Ganon's Tower Big Key to be in pod, you would need to be able to get literally every single small key outside of Ganon's Tower. The soft lock occurs if you basically go into Ganon's Tower with like 2 keys and use one of them to open Helmasaur. I think if you have 3 keys, you're pretty safe, and 4 keys, you're 100% safe.
So the bug has to do with Ganon's Tower in Dark Palace. Ganon's Tower key in Dark Palace, you're saying?
The bug has to do with other pod keys being behind items in pod, and that can't happen specifically to the Ganon's Tower key.
Okay, well I didn't know, like, the warning they gave us was very generic and did not go into all the details of the situation that that could happen in, so I had to assume the worst case.
So the reason it came up is because there was a soft lock in a race. I can't remember who was playing, but you can watch that VOD to see the intricacies of the kind of thing that can be behind a pod small key. I will look up what race that was.
And then the other big problem I had was I tried to kill Mothula blind early, and that both attempts failed, and I had to come back later because I just wasn't able to do it with 6 hearts and green mail.
No, this seed very much held out on you guys for quite some time on the amount of health you had, or the mail upgrades, with both being in Turtle Rock.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, okay. And that's like an hour and like 40 minutes into the seed. So it was like, okay. And then it didn't give us swords until I think pod. And I didn't do pod until maybe like an hour and some change into it. So it pretty much sucked. And then I went into desert early, and then luckily you had to anyways for the moon pearl, but Yeah. And then I didn't do escape for a really long time.
Yeah, same. I didn't do escape for quite a while as well. Probably one of the bigger problems I had was I ran out of money right before Dark Palace. There wasn't a whole lot of money in this seed. I checked. The biggest mistake I think I made was I checked Zora when it ended up locking me out of Dark Palace by doing that. I had to go farm rupees just to be able to get back into Dark Palace, or back over to Dark Palace and get in.
When did you get the hammer?
I tried Dark Palace before I got the hammer. I went to Ice Palace really late.
Same. I checked literally just about everything else before I went to Ice. And I was gonna check Swamp when I was there the first time, when I checked the tablet on my way over to Pod. But I was like, no, there's no way it could be there. There's so many other spots. But it would have gave me information, and that when I cleared everything else, I could have basically just went to Ice.
I was so worried that the key in the Lumberjack Cave was going to be critical somehow.
Yeah, when I didn't think it would be, just because I didn't get like all of the Skullwoods keys and the other Turtle Rock key. But had it been the Turtle Rock key or something like that, it would have been annoying.
Yeah, definitely lost this race on some of the mistakes I made with routing and dying and all that stuff. Plus the soft, like trying to work around a soft lock I didn't know couldn't happen.
So Myriachan, to be clear, your reset move in Pod is not why you lost this race. I think the most likely point that you were behind, like you were only about 3 minutes behind, and I think that's from a single death to a boss would have made that up.
Yeah, the dying early too, especially to Mothula, because I had a bottle and I had used it in that fight, so I really didn't think I could retry it. I was out of magic. I didn't have any life, so
Yeah.
if I had beaten Mothula, things might be different.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my biggest thing that messed me up was that I didn't clear Ice when I went in there, because I messed up the bomb jump so much that I had to actually not do the bomb jump, and then I didn't have the big key, and I didn't have another key, so I was like, well, I can't do it. I could just go back out and try again, but I was like, no, I'll just move on and come back. But that would have saved me probably maybe 5 minutes had I been able to do that. So
I managed to get the bomb jump, but it wasn't enough.
I mean, I got it the second time, but it was just terrible that I couldn't get it the first time, because I've practiced it about hours straight, just trying to get it down. I know exactly how to do it, but it's just my fingers don't work the way that they're supposed to.
Yeah, that's me in the hammer jump. Hammer jump in Dark Palace is really hard too, and I still don't know how to do it right.
I've practiced it a bunch. That's the only reason I'm able to do it.
Yeah, the hammer jump I have little to no problem with, but the Ice Palace just I don't know. I guess maybe I'm too far on the edge, because I know you can be a pixel off, 2 pixels off the edge or 1 pixel on the edge, and sometimes I just go too far. I don't know. But GG though.
GG.
The no major glitches, the no major glitches video, intro video, on YouTube that goes through every single dungeon, talks about all the requirements for the Ice Palace jump. It goes into a lot of detail, and I highly recommend looking at that if you have any issue understanding how the Ice Palace bomb jump works.
Yeah, I've looked at like all the videos. I mean, I know how to do it, but it's just like,
That's not just to you, that's to everyone listening.
yeah, it's very helpful. All the guides out there, there's so many.
Is there... Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm on the. I've watched a lot of resources, but my issue is if I have to do like a single frame input in a specific direction, that is where my fingers routinely fail me.
Yeah, exactly. Like one of the things that like I really want to learn is like I see a lot of like really top runners, right? They can sword buffer the Ice Palace bomb jump, but it's like it's very, I don't know, something specific about it because I've practiced that and I can get the exact, like it looks like the exact same as when someone else does it, but when I do it, right, I'll go flying all the way to like the other side into the hole, and it's just like I don't get it. But you know,
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about concerning the seed?
Having a hammer an hour into the seed was pretty nasty.
Yeah, the hammer location. When you got the hammer, I believe you were in item go mode. You were just looking for keys.
yeah, it was terrible. Flute being on ped, Ice Palace having the hammer.
Both the male upgrades being in Turtle Rock.
It was frustrating from the fact that my 2 tournament races were both pedestal seeds, so it's so tiring to have that because you do so much more of the game.
Anyway, if you've enjoyed watching this, give our runners a follow. They work hard for your entertainment and for this tournament. Give our commentators a follow. That's me, D2 Kemps, and my co-commentator, Stambra. And give our the person tracking and restreaming a follow, KK the Egyptian and Duke Firebird.
You guys for running this race for us.
Yeah, appreciate it.
It was my pleasure, and I'm sure Stambra had a good time too.
Absolutely, it was absolutely my pleasure. Thank you guys so much for running for us.
Anyway, thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and I think that's going to be us. So until next time, I have been D2 Kemps.
And I have been Stambra.
And we will see you next race. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Right.